In this video, we're going to do something completely different. And this will be interesting because I'm no finished carpenter. So sit back and let's see what I got myself into. So I'm sure you're asking yourselves, why is he showing us a big old slab of wood? Well, I'm asking myself the same question. The answer is we have a basement remodel going on, and I opted to make myself the bar top. So I'm going to do an Epoxy River Bar top. That's what I'm going to try to do anyways here, right? So I went out and got myself a big old slab of red oak, and right now we're in the process of squaring it up, and then we're going to split it down the middle, and we'll show you how to make an epoxy river table. All right, so first thing I need to do is square the ends up, right? So I need 110 inches for this bar top, so this is longer than pretty much any piece of wood or anything else like that, or any square I have around. So what I did was I used the wider end. That end's wider than this. You can't really tell in the video here, but that end is significantly wider than this one. So I took this actual 9-foot piece of OSB sheathing and I laid it on top of there. And the factory edges of a piece of OSB are square, okay? They're straight and they're square. So I laid that on the top there, and I could see that there was a bit of a bow out like this in this edge right here. So I had to square that up. You can kind of see here, it kind of tapers towards the ends. Ends get narrow, it's fatter in the middle. So I laid that on there. So I basically took my... I know I should have filmed this, but I got into the project and I forgot. Basically, I laid my square down. I measured back 6.5 inches, which is the width of my circular saw. And I basically made myself a guide here, right? So I measured 6.5 inches, clamped this down, measured 6.5 inches, clamped that down. Then I ran my saw along here to get a nice, straight, even edge, right? So then what I did was I took my piece of OSB on top of here after I clamped it down there, and I had an edge down here, right? So I needed 110 inches. So I measured out the remaining 2 inches from the edge of that 9-foot piece of OSB, and I marked where the 2 inches would be, so the 110 inches. Drew a line across with my square, got this out of the way, and then I did the same thing on this end, and I clamped on there and I cut off the excess because you see that was not square either. So now I should have 2 square edges. So my next step here is to try to figure out where I want my middle to be, and I'm going to rip down the middle here. So let me get set up and I'll show you what I did. Alright guys, so here's where we're at. I wanted to try to go off the center of the big one down here and see where it wound up down there, but it runs pretty much right through that knot right there, and I don't want to cut through that knot. Because how this is going to work is where I'm cutting down the middle, that will then become the outside edge of the bar top. I don't want a knot out there. So I cheated it over that way a bit. And I found where square was on my line here. Ignore the red line over here, that was an oops. I found where square was off the edge of this board here versus that red line right there. And I went down, ran my chalk line down that way and did the same thing off the other end. So I'm square on both ends here, and I snapped my red line. It's going to be this one here, and it put me, 1.5 inches away from that knot there. So that's good, that's what I want. And yeah, it's favoring one way versus the other down here, but that's okay because you'll see how this is going to work out once I cut this and flip it around. But now I'm going to go ahead and try to set myself up a guide, so I can cut this, or rip this lengthwise here, right, and try to get a nice straight rip on it. So let me get set up and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Alright, well, this isn't going to be as easy as I thought, because I have nothing long enough that's straight enough to span that distance. So what I have to do is I measured over from my red line 6.5 inches, which is the width from the outside edge of my saw to the inside edge of my blade here, okay? That way I can run the saw right down this way. Measured over from here to here, inside edge there, and I clamped it. Did the same thing down there. Now, once I get down to this edge, I'm gonna have to stop and readjust and remeasure and reclamp. Unless I can find a piece of wood laying around here that has, because that is a factory edge there. If I can find another piece that has a factory edge, I might be able to clamp it down here. So let me just put my peepers around and see if I can find another piece. 1 second. Nope, I'm not that lucky. So I'm gonna have to go with it this way. I'm gonna get down, fairly close to this edge, slide down and reclamp. Actually, I can probably go, down almost to the halfway point and then stop, readjust, reclamp, and finish off the rest of the cut. So that's what we're gonna do. You gotta work with what you got, like I always say, and this is what I got. So set up on the tripod, and I guess you can watch the cut, and we'll see where we're at. 1 second. All right, here we go. Hold on to your butts. Yes, I am wearing my safety glasses. Safety first. All right. See if we can do this without getting my cord hung up. Okay, it looks like it's right where I want it to be. All right, let's go. Uh-oh. I think I tripped the breaker. It's cutting real hard. This is oak, so it's pretty hard to cut. Let me check the breaker and I'll be right back. Yep, she tripped. All right, let's try that again. Hopefully this isn't a theme. I might have to not use the extension cord or use a shorter cord. We'll see. Slip her back down in the hole there, and all right, away we go. Again. All right, I'm gonna have to grab a shorter cord. Problem is I was cutting through that big knot there, so it was really hard. 1 second. All right, shorter cord engaged. See if that makes a difference. Let's go ahead and reset our guide. It's actually working pretty good. All right, I'll bring you right back. All right, home stretch. Let's see if we can make her happen. My blade is shot. Let me see if I have another one. 1 second. All right, third time's a charm. It's getting a little smoky in here, so I had to air it out. So let's try that one last time, hopefully. All right, here we go. Wow, that is some hard stuff. That was a brand new blade, and it feels like it dulled it right away. I think there must be a knot right there, too, on the other side. So, all right, let me get this all cleaned up, and we'll stack it up and check to make sure everything's squared up. So I'll show you that once I'm doing that. 1 second. Well, I got ahead of myself again, but I stacked the two pieces of wood up and put the straight edges against each other and the two ends, and they line up pretty damn good. Now, I'd be lying if I said it was perfect, but it's pretty darn good, so it's going to be close enough for the girls we date. So, this is basically how the bar top is going to look minus the river, right? So I've got 38 inches across here that I've allotted myself, and here's how the pieces all line up once I cut them and turn them around. That's going to look so slick. I'm very happy with that. And see, here's that knot I was talking about. So now that knot won't be on the very end, it'll be in a little bit, so that'll add a little bit of character right there when that gets full of epoxy. That's going to look pretty cool. So I'm really happy with that. All right, so next step is I have to build a form to set this in order to pour the epoxy. So let's get to work on building that form, and then I'll bring you along as I'm doing that. So let me get these big old chunks of wood out of my way. So stay tuned. All right, guys, as you can see, I moved this party into the basement, actually. It's nice and cool down here. This is also where the bar top is ultimately going to go, too. So we're going to build this down here. You also don't want a lot of heat when you pour epoxy in there because the epoxy generates heat. So you want it to be cool, and it's, in the 60s down here all the time. So that's what we're doing. So right now, we're working on building our mold, okay? So the idea is the slabs will sit here and here, and I'm going to build a frame around it, which I've actually already cut the wood for down there. And then you want some sort of a release agent. And I'm seeing that actually house wrap tape or Tyvek tape works really well, and that epoxy won't stick to it. So I'm going to measure out, I measured out 40 inches, you can see it marked there and there. Measured out 40 inches even though my width is going to be 38, and I'm going to lay Tyvek tape down on the base. I'm going to build my frame around the pieces of wood, and then lay Tyvek tape along the seams and on the sides of the wood. So I'll bring you back once I've got the base done so you can see what we've got going on here. So I guess just to show you, I put one piece down the middle, and I'm overlapping these like about a quarter inch to 3/8 of an inch, just to make sure that we've got good adhesion and that the wood is covered. So I'll bring you back once the base is done, so stay tuned. Alrighty, we have the base of our form all laid out. So yeah, that's a really nice, shiny, smooth surface. Alright, so now we need to build the sidewalls of our form. So if you remember, 110 inches is the length that we need, and 38 is the width. So I've already cut these 2x4s to 38 and double checked that they're like exactly the same length, so they are. None of this is nailed together, by the way, yet. So here's the issue I'm going to run into. My base here is only 9 foot long. Okay, I need 9'2", so 110 inches is 9'2". All right, so I'm gonna have to add on a piece on one end or the other to get it to seat properly. So what I'll probably do is lay a piece of 2x4 down like this underneath here to give me that extra 2 inches. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I gotta obviously jack it up so that it's level and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and get myself another 2x4. Probably screw it to here and to here, and then that will give us the rest of what we need. So I'll be right back. Alright, so what I've done is I've taken my this far end and I've screwed that together and squared it up. And now I'm down here, and I actually had to add another 2x4 here, right? So I've got two 2x4s for an extension here, and I've got it all tie-back taped up. And I've got shims underneath there to kind of level it out. But what I'm going to do is once I get everything where I want it to be, I'm going to send a screw up from the bottom into here to help hold everything tight, right? And I'm going to do the same thing up through the middle here through that one. So right now I've measured my 110 from that corner to put a mark there and there to there. So I'm going to get this guy all squared up and screwed together on the sides, and then I'll show you once that's done. So just give me a minute and I'll do that. All right, everything is squared up. I've got these boards secured down here. I'm not going to secure the rest right now. I will in a minute, but what I've got to do now is take my Tyvek tape, go all the way around this form here up to the top so that my seams down here are sealed and my sides are sealed. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll bring you back. All right, well, I'd be lying if I'd say that wasn't a tedious process, but that was a tedious process, especially getting these corners done, right? Probably the smarter thing to do would have been to put the Tyvek on the outside of this first before I screwed everything together, and then just do that in the corners, or even maybe like leave it half on here and let it overlap and then set it down. I don't know, but whatever. We got her done. I ran out of my Tyvek tape that I had, and luckily I had some old stuff laying around, so hopefully that works out well for me. It's just 2 rows on that end and 1 row on this end. So now it is time to gingerly, I do mean gingerly, set our slabs inside the mold. So I'm going to go ahead and get those set in there, and we'll see if they fit properly. So I'll bring you back 1 second. All right, well, we got in there. She was a tight fit, though. My ends were basically dead nuts on. I should have went a scotch bigger, but we got it in there. So we do have a little bit of gappage going on here. So my saw guide must have walked on me a little bit as I was making that cut. Probably because I only had it clamped on the end, so I'll bet you that piece of OSB was bowing out a little bit there. So you can see we've got like a wave here, and it kind of goes the other way on this side, right? So that tells me that my guide was bowed. Not the end of the world. I can make this up with some of that deep pour epoxy once I get to that point. And I got plenty of space. So on the bar top over there, I have a big overhang there. So I'll have plenty of space to shimmy this around, so I'm not going to come up short anywhere. So I think we're still in good shape here. But yeah, I think the best thing to do is going to be to try to make up this gap here with some of the deep pour epoxy, so you just have a little bit of a epoxy on that edge there. But I think we're still going to be in pretty good shape. All right, so next thing I'm going to do is take some screws and come up through the bottom here and screw our OSB to the 2x4s just to make sure everything stays nice and rigid. Not going to go crazy with them, just maybe like 4 on each side and a couple across here. Well, this one's already screwed on, but maybe do a couple down there, maybe a couple 2 down there, just to make sure everything's in place, and then I'll bring you back for the next step. All right. Everything's all screwed down. I just looked for gaps along there to see if there was any, so I snugged it up so there wasn't any. So hopefully we don't have any leaks. Hopefully I put the slabs in there gingerly enough where I didn't puncture any of the Tyvek there. So, all right, next thing you want to do is make sure that your mold is level, okay? So when you're pouring in the liquid epoxy, you don't want it to like flow to one end or the other. You want it to be pretty level, and you can see I'm dead nuts, okay? So my floor must be level, so that's good. I will go across the other way, grab my short level, make sure that's good too. Really what you'd have to do then is just kind of shim up the bottom or shim up, you know, the platform there. Okay, so now the next thing I need to do is take some measurements so I know how much epoxy to get. So a lot of these websites you get the epoxy from, they tell you to, you know, measure your length, measure your depth, and then take periodic measurements along the way so they can guesstimate how much epoxy you're going to need, because obviously no 2 slabs are gonna be the same. So yeah, we're gonna do that next. So I will get that ready and I'll bring you back. All right, so basically what we have to do is we have to take our length, which we know is 110. We have to take our width, so I'm going to kind of do an average and take it in like 4 or 5 different spots. And then we need to take our depth, which I figured out is 2 inches. So I took my measurements here, took one here, took one here, took one here, took one there, and took one at the widest spot over there. and it averaged out to 12.875 inches wide. So when you put that in a calculator, you put all three dimensions in there, it tells me I need like 12.29 gallons of epoxy. So basically 13 gallons is what they're recommending. So that ain't gonna be cheap, fellers. But that's what we're dealing with, so I'm going to go ahead and get that on order, and I will bring you back when it's time to start pouring some of this stuff. So I'll see you in about a week. All right, everyone, we're back. So our slab is all set. I went through and I took a hard bristled wire wheel, but it's like actually plastic, not wire, and I hit all my edges here to try to knock off anything loose. The bark was already off, but there was still some like rotted areas and like some mushrooms and stuff like that. So I knocked all that stuff off so that when the epoxy goes in here, it has a chance to actually impregnate the wood and make a really good bond. The other thing I did, which I should have done before I taped it off, was I actually put caulk around the whole perimeter and up where the seams are here in the back. Now, it would have been a lot easier if I had done it as I nailed or screwed this down and put it like right along the tape edge there. Just in case we spring a leak, the epoxy will go everywhere once I'm doing the deep pour. Okay, so that's something you want to do as well. So this isn't ideal. If I have a leak, it'll come over here and it'll get into this wood, but that's still better than going all over the floor. I'll be able to deal with that a lot easier. All right, so also I made double, triple, quadruple sure that everything was level. I took levels both the long way and the short way, and I went down intervals, and I actually had to come under here and hit it with shims in different areas to make sure that things were level all the way across. So that way when I pour my deep pour epoxy, which is really, really thin, it'll just fill up rather than flow one direction or the other type of thing. So I think we're in good shape that way. All right, now it's time to move on to the next step. So what I am gonna do, which is different than what I've seen in a lot of different areas, is instead of pouring the epoxy or straight on the bottom or using a colored epoxy, I'm actually going to attempt to make a sand mixture and make it look like an actual sandy bottom river with some other objects in it. So we'll show you that in a minute there. But so basically what I have to do is mix up my epoxy, some epoxy, and keep adding sand in there and mixing it until it gets to the consistency of like sandcastle sand, and then you can mold it and spread it around in the bottom of the river bottom and kind of pack it down and make it real smooth, and then you can put features into it. So that's what we're gonna do. So let me get you set up on the tripod and we'll attempt to show you how we're going to mix this up here. So 1 second. Okay, so this is a two-part epoxy where you have your resin and you have your hardener. So it's 2 parts resin to 1 part hardener. Okay, so they say if I'm doing like the full batch, don't just dump all of the tubs in there because you got to get the measurements exact. So that's why we've got a graduated. This is a 1 gallon. Well, more than a gallon graduated cylinder here basically, right, or a pitcher. So for starters here, because I don't know how much sand to resin I'm going to need, I'm going to start off with a little bit of resin and then fill up the sand, and hopefully that's going to get us where we want to be. But I'm going to start off with 25 milliliters of the hardener and then take it up to 75 milliliters of the resin to get my 2-to-1 ratio. Okay, so let's try that. So the blue is going to be our hardener. So we're going to try to get our 25 milliliters in there. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and fill it up to 75. So adding 50 of our resin. All right, we're almost there. We're almost there. We're almost there. Whoop. Slow down. Okay, 75. So that should give us just about a perfect 2-to-1 ratio. I'm gonna go ahead and put my lids back on. Don't mix up the lids. You're gonna be an unhappy panda because you're gonna glue your lid back on. So let's do that. All right. So now I need to mix this thoroughly to make sure my resin and my hardener are mixed up. So I got myself just a paint stir stick here, and we're just gonna keep mixing. Doesn't really matter too much at this point as far as bubbles go because of what I'm doing here, but it's always a good idea to not try to get bubbles in here, especially once I'm doing my clear pour later, but right now, not too much of a concern. So I'm putting all that sand in there. But we want to give this a good mix. Make sure you're scraping the sides and everything else to make sure that nothing's left behind, because the hardener is very thin compared to the resin. So you want to make sure that they don't separate out on you here. So get a good mixture everywhere until it clears up on you. Looks like we're actually just about there, but we'll give it a little bit more. Doesn't really give you like a time frame for mixture on the container, so just so that you can't see that it's separated anymore. Again, this is my first time doing this, so if anybody sees any issues with what I'm doing, please don't be afraid to let me know. Hopefully I do it right the first time here and I don't have a big problem with my nice slab of wood up there, but that looks to me like we're pretty well mixed in. So let's let our stir stick drip off here. Another thing too is, I didn't mention, I put drop cloths all around this thing so I'm not making a big mess in case I spring a leak or something like that, or when I have to set stuff down. So, okay. Now we're going to start mixing in sand. So I think it's going to take most of the sand. I might actually have too much resin in here. So I think I'm actually going to pour half of this into another jug and then start mixing in the sand, because I think I'm pretty sure I have too much resin in here for the amount of sand I'm going to need. So kind of mix that about half and half. It's pretty close. All right, so now we'll just set this one aside so we can use that one in a minute. Now we're gonna have plenty of working time here. This stuff takes like 2-3 days to cure, so not really time constrained here. So now I'm just gonna start shoveling sand and mixing it in until I get to about the consistency of modeling clay, where I can, not modeling clay, sandcastle sand, so that I can mold it around. So no real good way to do this. I don't really have a scoop or anything, so I'm just gonna use my hand to throw a bunch in there and start mixing. Now this sand too, it is important that this sand is dried out. So I've had this sand in these buckets for, I don't know, over a week now. And I'd put it outside in the sun to let it bake out. And I'd keep stirring it around to try to get all the moisture out of here, because you do not want moisture in the resin. That wrecks it apparently. So that's just something you have to keep in mind too if you're going to use this method. Now, I haven't found too many videos where people actually did what I'm trying to do here. So this will be interesting, but it should work, because I actually work for a foundry and we do a similar process where we make sand molds, where we mix resin with sand, and we're able to pour castings in it, and they're nice and strong. So I'm confident this is going to work. All right, so you can see we're still pretty thin here, so that means we're going to have to add more sand in, but I'm going to give this a good stir, make sure we get everything worked and get that sand nice and wet. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and grab some more sand and throw it in there, but I think we're going to start to get close. Yeah, I should have gotten a scooper for this. That would have been a lot easier, but I'm kind of making a little bit of a mess here, but that's okay. All right, let's try that. That might get us close here once I get that all wet. I might be able to do what I want to do, so we'll see. I almost need a stiffer mixer here because I'm about ready to break this paint stir stick. Yeah, we're getting there, folks. A little bit more stirring because some of that sand is still dry. It hasn't quite hit the resin yet. Starting to do what I want to do though. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and add in just a little bit more sand. I'll cut you guys off and I'll bring you back when we're about ready to go. So 1 second. All right, I wound up adding a little bit more sand, but I think I got it to the consistency we want here. So it's moldable now. You can pick it up and it'll kind of hold its shape here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour some in the bottom here and spread it along the whole bottom. This portion is only gonna cover just a little bit of it, I think, but get myself about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch layer along the bottom that's real hard packed. Then we'll come back and hit it with some looser stuff and I'll show you what we're gonna do with it. So let's just see how this is gonna work out here. Lay our stir stick down here. Yeah. Oop, you can see I didn't really get it mixed in the best over here. It's a little bit sloppy in the bottom, so I'm gonna go ahead and just mix some of this together here in the bottom. Yeah. Tough. I'm going to have to use less binder, less sand, and then I'll have more room for mixing down in there. I couldn't quite reach down that deep with my mixing stick as I was doing this. So we're learning as we go, folks. Now we're just kneading it like dough basically here in our little channel. But I think this is going to work out real nice. Oh man, try not to get sand on top. You're not going to be happy. Alright, so let's see if we can't spread this out a little bit. Actually works pretty good to just push it along like this. You do want to make sure you're wearing gloves with this too, by the way. You don't want to put your hands right on this resin. There's warnings all over it about skin irritation and everything else. So this is actually going to cover a decent amount. I'm kind of surprised. Alright, I'm going to keep working that just like that and get it nice and smooth and laid out, and then I'll bring you back and show you what it looks like once I get it there. So 1 second. Alright, so we got that portion of it smeared out, and it actually covered quite a bit. We're maybe a third of the way done with that bottom there, but you can see at the bottom there it's still real like thick, or not thick, real thin, real epoxy-y. So I wasn't able to mix it properly. So the next round I have that epoxy in there. I think I'm going to cut that in half, pour half of that into this jug, and then do the sand in both of those. That way I should be able to get deeper down and get a good mix in there. But I think my consistency over here is pretty good. That's going to be moldable and things like that. So you'll see what we're going to do with the next part. But I'm going to go ahead and mix up some more sand and then smear that out and show you once that is all smeared out. So stay tuned. All right, we're back. So that worked pretty good. I'm very impatient, so that was hard for me, but I found that mixing smaller batches up, like 30 milliliters at a time, and then mixing the sand in and working my way down, it worked really good. But you can see I got a pretty nice even consistency all the way down. I think I got to smooth that out a little bit right there. It looks like fingerprints, but that looks like a nice, good, smooth consistency all the way down here. So now we're going to start adding props. So I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but what I'm going to do here is like a fall hunting scene with my son and me. Yeet! So what we're going to do is make it look like, you know, we started down here and we shot at a deer, so there's going to be a bullet casing down there. Then we're going to have footprints going down here, and I'm going to embed an actual deer antler into the wall down here. I think I'm going to have it laying. I cut it. I need to fix it up a little bit, but I cut it and it's going to be laying down in there like that with a little bit protruding out the top, because this is going to be against an end wall here. Okay, then we're going to add in, I got some fake oak leaves. It's summertime here in Wisconsin, so we don't have any fall colors right now. Everything will be green, so I got some fake oak leaves to lay down there. We got some river rocks, which I might actually get a few more of those. Got some fake maple leaves, and then we got some actual pine cones that are good and dried out, various sizes that we're going to embed down there too. And then I also got, off of Etsy, someone makes 3D printed deer hoofs to make, it's supposed to be caribou hoof prints, but we're gonna make deer hoof prints in there too, like we were following the deer. So let us get set up, and we're gonna start adding stuff in here, and then we'll bring you back as we're working our way through the process. So stay tuned. All right, folks, here's what we've done. I took my boot prints and footprint, just basically pressed down with the boot and made a footprint. Did the same with my sons, and I walked our way down towards my deer antler there. I did the same thing with the deer hoof prints on the ground there, like we were following that deer. And there's my bullet casing. We embedded some of the rocks, some of the pine cones, some of the leaves, all the way down here. Then I took a little bit of the epoxy that was left over and I drizzled it over some of these leaves to try to make sure that they stay, you know, where they're at right there. In the hopes of getting somewhat of a 3D effect, so they're not all just like completely flat there. So when I pour the deep pour, hopefully they will show some change in depth there. So that would be really cool. I'd like to see that once I put that in there. But that's basically how I want the bottom to look there. And then propped up the deer horn down there, and this is gonna protrude out, but this, again, I said, will be against the side wall there, so I'm gonna have to fix that up there with some putty or something on the back side there once I break the mold now. But yeah, I'm gonna let this push this one a little bit more, let this cure for a couple days until it starts getting nice and hard, and then I'll do my deep pour right over the top of that there, and that should be pretty cool. So I will bring you back in a couple days once I've let this cure, and we'll see how hard it's getting. So stay tuned until then. All right, here we are. We're about a little more than 24 hours later, about a day and a half later, and this stuff is getting to be rock hard right now. So I think we're ready for the next step here. That's gonna be to pour. You can see right here I had a little bit of pooling settling out, but that's no big deal. That's just an area where I had some of the soupier stuff mixed in there, so that'll all even out once I pour here. But yeah, everything, even all the way down here, everything is firm, so everything's gonna hold its shape now, and like the pine cones and all that, they're stuck in there pretty good. The leaves are stuck down and everything else, so I don't think anything's gonna float up on me. A friend of mine gave me a good idea here too, was to take a beer can and crush it up and put it in here, which makes sense. So I actually had some old beer cans from back, actually from my dad and my uncle's original hunting cap back in the 70s I had found in the woods. So I took one home, and I remembered I had it, so I crushed that up and I put it in here, so it's actually like one of my dad's beer cans from back in the 70s, so that's kind of cool. So that'll be encased in there too. So hopefully that doesn't want to float up on me because it's not encased in the epoxy right now. So I think I'm going to pour some right here down the pull tab there and try to get it full so it doesn't try to float up on me, but I think we'll be okay. Anyways, so now the next step is to get big quantities of our deep pour mixed up and pour it down our river here. So I've got a big graduated mixing bucket here, and I got a bunch of the stuff brought down here. So I think I'm going to start off with my smaller containers here that are already partially used. Get some of that mixed up and in the bucket there, and pour that in first, just to see how it's going to react before I fully commit to, you know, going larger scale here. So let me go ahead and get myself set up here, and we'll show you our mixing process. So 1 second. All right, guys, I got my bucket set up here. I dumped in what was left of my hardener, and it took me up to 0.75 gallons. Okay, so that means I needed to go up to 2.25 gallons to get my 2-to-1 ratio of hardener to resin here, right? So I dumped in what was left of my hardener, got to there. I dumped in what was left of my resin, and it took me to just under 2.25 gallons. So that's why they say don't just dump the bottles in and take it for granted, because there may be a little bit of differences, and you know, stuff may be getting stuck on the side of these bottles or whatever because the resin is a lot fuller. So I'm going to have to actually add a little bit from a different bottle in order to get myself up to 2.25. But I'm going to dump these bottles on their side, try to let them drain down a little bit. That way we can collect some more later. You see, this bottle was damaged pretty good in shipping, so that's lovely. Oh, all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take that lid off and puncture our seal. We're going to dump a little bit more in here to get us up to 2.25. Stop. A little bit more. Okay, that should be just about perfect. All right, so now we can go ahead and start a mixing process. All right, so what I've gotten is a mixer like this. for my drill to stick in there. And we'll get that all mixed up nice and good. So I'll show you what it looks like as I'm doing this here. See if I can get you off the tripod and do this one-handed. When you're in there, you can see it kind of looks kind of purplish and kind of cloudy. So we're going to start mixing this up. We're going to get this all mixed up, and I'll show you, and you can kind of see how there's layers in there, right? So that kind of tells you it's not mixed up properly yet. So I'm going to keep doing this and bring you back and show you what it looks like once we're done. So give me a moment. Alright, so here's what it looks like after about a minute or so of mixing. You can see I got some air bubblage down in there. I actually turned my drill on high this time, but if you're looking, you don't really see the layers anymore like you did before. Okay, so that means we're getting a good mixture going here. So I think we're just about ready. I'm going to actually turn it back down to slow and try to see if I can get some of those bubbles worked out. Doesn't matter too much because the bubbles will come out as I'm pouring on, or after I pour on the table, and we'll show you how to deal with that in a minute. But I'm going to finish stirring this up here, and then I'll bring you back and we'll show you pouring on the table. So just 1 second. All right, we're set up. We're going to start the pour. So I actually poured a little bit into my big pitcher here, and I'm going to put that on the beer can first, try to get that beer can full. Then we'll work on pouring some down the rest of it. So here we go. All right, now we'll get the big bucket and dump a little bit. Dump what we got in there out. Okay, we're starting to fill up, so I'm going to go ahead and mix up another couple gallons, and then we'll come back and we'll show you the next pour. Well, actually, hold on, we'll show you right here. So, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's some bubbles on the surface there, right? So you want to get rid of those bubbles. So let me go grab my torch and I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so we got those bubbles in there, and you want to break the surface tension. So you take your torch, hopefully you can see that. Look at that, see how it's just breaking up the tension? You want to keep the torch moving and don't let it rest in any one spot. See that, how that works? So I'm going to go up and down and do the whole thing, and we'll show you what everything's looking like after I get all the bubbles popped. So 1 second. Alright, so here's how things are starting to look. You can see some more bubbles are coming up, but that's going to be normal. I'm going to pour some more, so it's going to cause some more turbulence, but everything's looking pretty good. I am a little worried about this can floating up on me here. It is moving a little bit. So I might have to try to stake it down somehow, but we'll see how it goes with the next pour here. But everything's looking pretty good. Might have a little bit of a level issue, but I think the sand was thicker down in this end than that end. So we'll see after we're getting the next pour how everything's looking. But I'm going to go ahead and mix up some more, and then I'll show you as we're doing the next portion of the pour. Alrighty, I mixed up 3 more gallons. So 1 part hardener, 2 parts epoxy. So here we go. Okay, now we'll take our torch and repeat the same process. You can also use a heat gun for this as well, but I just kind of think a torch is more fun. You can see it getting more clear as I'm going down there. Hopefully you can see that on the camera, but I can see it from where I'm standing. From popping all those bubbles. My can is floating on me here, so I'm going to go outside and try to find a small rock so I can see if I can pin that down. So I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to mix up some more epoxy, and I'll bring you back for another pour. So stay tuned. All right, here's how we're looking so far. Get that out of the way. I think it's turning out pretty good. It looks like everything's turning out pretty level. I don't really necessarily see any higher spots or lower spots. If you can kind of look down here. The leaves are kind of doing what they wanted them to do, make them look like they're actually underwater, where parts are actually kind of floating up, giving it a little bit more depth and like some 3D effects in some areas. See, like that one's poking up there, and everything looks like it's gonna be below the surface. Whoops. Here I got a couple of rocks to help weigh down my beer can there to make sure that it doesn't float away. And those shouldn't be, well, I'll double check that one, but I don't think it'll be above the top layer. Even if it is, I can just scoot it over a little bit once I get the final pour done, and we'll be good. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and mix up some more epoxy, and we will give it another pour. So stay tuned and I'll bring you back. All right, I mixed up another 3 gallons. I poured about a half a gallon into my big pitcher because if this one does take us up to the top, there's some other features I want to try to fill in here. So first off, let's try to pour off what we have left in the big bucket and see how far it gets us. Let's see what we got going on here. We're nearing the top in some areas we're not. Alright, let's pour a little bit more out. Okay, we're not quite up to the top yet. So we're gonna have to mix up a bit more. We're getting close. So I might only need about a quarter of what I just did. Right here, I'm gonna take my pitcher, but right now I'm gonna try to fill up some of these cracks and other small features on top. So let me take you along for that. Hopefully I can do both on the camera at the same time. So got this big crack here. You can see epoxy is coming up into it, but I just want to make sure I'm getting it all the way. So we'll just drizzle some on there. Here, let that fill in. The big thing is I got a big void over here. I did put caulk in the bottom of this, and then a little bit of, or not caulk, I put some sand down in the bottom of this so it doesn't go all the way through. But we're gonna go ahead and fill that right up to the top here. That's gonna be kind of a cool feature in there. Yeah, and we'll let it fill into all those cracks and crevices in there. It should absorb in as I'm doing this. I'm gonna let it go a little bit high. And look at the color that it's bringing out in that wood. Making it really like dark looking and everything. That's really cool. I'm gonna like this once it's done, I'm sure of it. Pour a little bit more on top of there. Yep, and that stuff should start seeping down in there. Let's see what else we got that we might want to fill in here. We got this big old crack right here. There, that's good. Yeah, I guess we could hit this one a little bit too. Ooh, kind of missed. Hard to look at the camera and pour stuff at the same time. Okay, not bad, not bad. Oh yeah, we got some over here. Let me just finish up this side. Yeah, here's a little knot right here we can fill in a little bit. Okay. Let me see these. Yeah, I may want to fill those in a little bit. Now I'm going to have to sand this surface when I'm done, so it's okay if that's a little high. We just want to make sure we're filling in the majority of it and letting it seep down in there and add a little bit of strength. That one I'm going to let go. This is just a chunk of sand, I think. Yep. Guess we could put a little bit on there. Let it seep in nice and deep like. Yeah. Okay, what else? Yeah, we got these. Let's see. Those are probably going to be okay. Probably put some in here. Yeah, we got a couple over here we're going to fill in. Yep. Yep. This one's a pretty good void. Yep. And yeah, we'll do a little bit on this one. There's quite a few cracks in there. Let that seep in, and then we got one over here on the end. I'll put some in. There we go. All right. I think that's it for all the voids that I want to fill in right now. All right, we'll go ahead and pour the rest of this in here. There, my can's staying down now, so that's good. You can see we still need a little bit more. We got like an 1/8 inch that still needs to be covered up here. So we're gonna go ahead and mix up, oh, maybe about 1.5 gallons more here, and then see where we're at. So I'll bring you back once we're ready for that. All right, I mixed up another 1.5 gallons. I think that's actually too much for what I need, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. I poured some off in my pitcher, and I started, working on some of my other little spots here because those are sucking in pretty good. Still got some left, but now we're gonna try to finish off this pour here. So let's see what happens. A little bit more in. We're getting real close to where we want to be, folks. We're starting to spew over the top in most places here, so we're really, really close. Try a little bit more down here. Yeah, you can see there's swirls in there. That's because this one, when I mixed it up, was really shallow. That's just air bubbles in there, right? So that'll all come out. I'll get it out with the torch and whatever else. But I think we're just about there. Maybe we'll try to put a little bit more in here, but we're pretty much right up to the top in just about every location here. So pour a little bit more here. And check the other end because that seemed a little bit on the low side too. flowing over just about every place, so that's looking pretty good. All right, let's go ahead and pop those bubbles and see where we're at. See, those are just deep bubbles down in there. Those should work themselves out. You can see it cleared up right here. We'll give those a little bit to come to the surface, but we'll work on the rest of it here. All right, we'll let that settle for a little bit. I'm going to continue to work on some of my low spots here that are sucking up more epoxy, but they're starting to top themselves off now. So I'm just going to keep working at this, pop bubbles every so often, and then I'll bring you back in a little bit. So stay tuned. All right, here's where we're at. I just added a little bit more to this end because it was a little bit on the low side, but as you can see, that's still a little bit cloudy because I just added some, but down here, it's all gotten crystal clear again. It looks awesome. And then here, where it's overflowed, just look at how it's bringing out some of the character in the wood, and look at how it's just reflecting the light off it. Look, it's bringing out a lot of the character in the grain, so it's not quite so mundane there. And look at like the knots here. And here, I want to show you this part over here. Don't trip and kill myself. See, look at like this area here, how you can see all the swirls and stuff like that in the wood. Looks super cool. I'm super excited about this because I think it's going to look really good when it's done. All right, so I'm just going to keep babysitting this for a little bit. Still having trouble with some of these knots seeping up the epoxy, so I'm going to keep adding that to the knots there. Yeah, this crack here. That one over there is a big one, a big sponge. We're going to keep doing that, and then hit it about every half hour, try to pop any more bubbles, and then that'll be about it for now. I'll bring you back in a couple days once this thing's solidified, and we'll see how it looks then. So stay tuned. All right, folks, here we are. So I'm going to attempt to fix these bubble channels that I have going through here. So I've got myself an 1/8 inch drill bit. I cleared off. I already did a test one. I'll show you in a minute here, but seemed to work pretty good. Got most of it. So basically, I'm going to drill a hole on either end of it. So one like right here, and one like right here somewhere to try to get on both ends in hopes that I can push epoxy through it and it won't keep air trapped. So let's see if we can do that here. So I'm going to try coming down straight here into that end. And you can feel when you get through it. So I'm into a hollow spot there. I'm going to try to do the same thing right here on this end. I'm into it. All right, so I'm gonna try to blow through to see if I can blow out the epoxy. So 1 second, or any of the dust from me drilling there. 1 second. All right, so I mixed up some of my deep pour into a small bin, and I have a syringe here. So I'm going to suck some epoxy up in the syringe, see if I can't push this through. So see if I can do it so I can show you, but here, we're gonna go from this end towards where you are. Hopefully you can see that, but it is actually filling in the channels pretty nicely there, down inside. It's pushing out the bubbles. All right, we'll get a little bit more. Now there might still be some micro bubbles trapped down there, but you can see it's getting a lot better than it was. Where'd my hole go here? There it is. See if we can get the rest of it out. There's one bubble in there that doesn't quite want to fill in. But, I mean, I got most of it. So we're like, I'd say 90% of that channel is gone. So I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and try to work on some of the rest of these there. And here, I'll show you my test piece here. Let me set this syringe down first. Show you the test one I did over here. I mean, you can't even hardly see it because it's all gone, but there was one that ran from like right here all the way over to here. But I took care of it. It's gone. So you can still see there's some stuff on top there. That's from me spreading it around a little bit, but it's a lot better than it was. So I'm going to go ahead and work on some of the rest of these, and I'll show you once I get done here. So stay tuned. All right, guys, we made some progress. So that seemed to work pretty good on everything down there. Kind of looks like stuff right now just because I've got like overflow from the epoxy and there's some of that dust like sticking to everything, but that's all going to clean up as I do this. But yeah, see, that's what that is right here. That's overflow. But like most of those big channels are gone now, so that method actually worked pretty good. I'm going to leave some of the bubbles down there because it will look kind of natural, like you're actually in a river or a lake bottom or something like that. But a lot of those big unsightly ones are gone. So I've gone ahead to it and I've filled in some of these cracks. This one needs a little bit more. That one held up really well. I might put a little bit more on top of that. And then filled in some of the big bubbles. And then this crack here is actually holding epoxy now too. I'm going to have to top it off a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and top off all the bubbles and everything like that. Let this cure for a couple more days and then we'll come back and we'll demold it. So I'll bring you back at that time. Alright guys, we're back. It's been several days. Everything that I poured on top there has solidified. It's nice and rock hard now. Admittedly, it kind of looks like crap right now just because there is some like smear marks and things like that, and there's still some of the powder left over from the drill marks. But the areas where I drilled the bubbles out, you can hardly see. So I think that is a win. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is unmold this thing. And see what we're dealing with as far as some of the leakage out the sides and things like that. So that'll take us one step closer to taking this thing outside and sanding everything smooth. So, you know, some of these smear marks, everything like that will go away once we sand it smooth. So nothing to worry about there. So yeah, let me go ahead and start unmolding this thing and I'll show you things as I run into them. All right, we got everything demolded here. We'll just go do a walk around. There were a few spots where she was stuck to the wood pretty good, where it snuck between the Tyvek tape and the caulk and everything on there, where I had some leaks, but not too bad overall. I was able to pry it pretty much apart. So the Tyvek tape does do its thing. That's pretty impressive because this stuff is really sticky. But yeah, other than that, it looks pretty good. I'm gonna have quite a bit of cleanup to do on the edges here. This edge, well, let's see right here. Yeah, right here we've got quite a bit protruding out here, but I'll be able to sand that off, so that's no big deal. We'll get that sanded flush. This end needs quite a bit of work over here too, but we'll get that all sanded off. So now I just need to find the time to get it outside and do a sand job, because I definitely don't want to do that in the basement because it's going to be very dusty. So I want to take it outside and get it going that way. So I'll bring you back once we're set up outside whenever I am able to find time to do that. So stay tuned until then. Alright guys, well, we're going to have a slight change of plans. I took some measurements across here with a straight edge just to see how flat everything was, and there's quite a big cup in the middle, meaning it's higher on the outside, lower in the middle, so that would have been a lot of sanding. So I decided to make an investment in a router sled. So basically this turns a router kind of into like a planer, or like a, not really a scene, it's like a manual milling machine. So basically your router mounts on here. These wheels roll along the table here, and you turn on the router, and here, I'll show you. I have actually a really big 2-inch surfacing bit in there, and this kind of acts as a mill. So I've got it locked in place here, and I'm going to run straight down the middle to get a nice smooth surface down the middle. Move over 2 inches, come back, move over 2 inches, come back, you know, and so on and so forth. And this should make this whole thing nice and level. So the reason I did that again is because it would have taken a lot of sanding, and this thing is too heavy for my wife and I to move upstairs. It would take like 4 guys to get this thing to move upstairs. It's very, 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 very heavy. So you can see I set myself up a dust shield down here. I've got heavy plastic everywhere down here to keep the dust contained to this portion of the garage. I went ahead and I made sure everything was level on the table. Everything was level on my router sled here, front and back, side to side, so everything's square. So I should get a nice even surface when I'm done, and that'll get out a lot of these imperfections, it'll get out these ridges, and it'll get out that cup that's in here. So it should be really good and flat by the time I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and set you up in the tripod, and I'll show you the test pass, and we'll see how it works. I've got it set up to run right down the middle, one pass. Just taking a little bit off the middle because I do have some of those bubbles and things in here like this. I want to try to work out. But yeah, let's set you up and we'll see how it works. All right, let's give this a shot. Let's have a look-see. Doesn't roll the smoothest. It's probably partially because of this OSB I have laying here. It would work better on a smoother board, but I'm going to take the shop vac and clean this off for the next pass. But running my hand along where it went, that did smooth it out significantly. So I think that's going to work good. All right, so let me go ahead and get this cleaned up a little bit, set it back up, and then I will show you the next pass. So stay tuned. Alright, so I lied. I wasn't going to show you the next pass. What I wound up doing is a little bit of trial and error there. Trying to figure out how best to use this router sled, and I found out that the cutter that I had in there was a little bit too big, a little bit too much size for the power of this router that I have. So I wound up getting a smaller one, 1.5 inches, that has removable inserts, because that one that I had actually burned up pretty good once I got to this area right here as I was milling it. I also found out you only want to take about half a cut on the milling head. I don't have one laying here so I can show you, but instead of taking a full cut, only go about a half cut. It cuts much better, much smoother, much faster, and it doesn't get as hot, doesn't bog down the motor as much. But I went ahead and I did a few passes, and I got the whole thing down to the point where I'm going to do one more finish pass here, right? So I've just got this depth to go. So you can see I've got it set up so it's right at that depth. That's what I'm going to do. The other problem I'm running into is, like I showed you, I don't have enough travel to do the whole thing at once. I'm having to stop somewhere around here and then do this whole half and then stop and reset. And then, because I have my antler sticking up here, I'm only able to do right here. Then I have to pick it up and put it over here. Then, because of where the antler is sitting inside the center of my router sled frame there, I'm not able to get this portion of it. So I'm going to have to take the router off just to do this little portion here to get it down to everything else's. So a little bit of putzing around. That antler's kind of kicking me in the butt the way I did it right there, but we're going to still leave it. We're going to get this to work. So what I'm going to do is do one more finish pass on the whole thing, and I'll set you up and show you a bit of a time lapse here on how this process goes. So stay tuned while I set you up. Okay, here we go. right, folks, flattening is 99.95% done. I was able to do the whole table except for that little patch right there, which I'm going to have to take the router off and use the plunge feature to get the rest of that very, very carefully. But I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Yeah, there's mill marks in here. It's a little uneven in some spots, but I do have to sand this yet. So I'll hit that with some 40 grit probably around the whole thing to get all these marks out and then work my way up in grit. So I'm going to go ahead and take myself a breather tonight, but I'm glad that portion of it's done. That was a lot of work. So I'll bring you back when I'm going to mill that out, or finish milling that out, and then sand the rest. So stay tuned. All right, well, I cleaned up a lot of this mess here. I had literally inches of sawdust and saw chips on the floor here, but we're on to sanding here now. So I've already hit this. I'm just using a belt sander. I'm sorry, a rotary sander. A lot of guys use a belt sander for the big taking off of material because it doesn't leave swirl marks, but I'm not really seeing any swirl marks here. So I've hit it with 40 grit just to get some of those really deep gouges from milling out. And I'm pretty satisfied with the way it's turned out. And I worked on my transition areas here between the epoxy and the wood. You can see I haven't done the middle yet here, but that's what we're going to tackle next. So just wanted to show you the progress as I'm going here. So I'm going to finish up the middle here with my 40 grit and come back, and I believe I have 150 grit and then 220 grit I'm going to do with the rotary sander. And then I'm going to come back, I think, with my orbital sander and do some more. So let's just see how this progresses, and I'll bring you back once I get that middle portion done there. So stay tuned. All right, I've hit the whole thing with my 60 grit, and I got all those bubbles out of there, the majority of them. There's still a few little tiny ones left in here, but I'm not really going to be too concerned with those. So now I'm going to come back and hit it with some 150 grit, try to take out, there's really not much for swirl marks in there, so it's looking pretty good. So we're going to come back with some 150 grit, try to smooth everything out a little bit more. Then we'll go from there. So you can see I put there's marker marks on here. So why would I do that? Well, it's a little trick I learned where you take the marker and you go all over the whole thing there, right? And when you sand enough to make the marker disappear, that means you've knocked down a layer. So then you can check it and see how smooth everything's feeling. So I'm gonna sand until I see that marker disappear, and then I'll show you what that looks like after I'm done with that 150 grit. So stay tuned. Also, I guess I should add that I did a really good job of vacuuming this off and then taking a cloth and trying to wipe off whatever residual dust I had to give me a nice clean sand here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the 150, and then I'll bring you back. All right, we've hit it with 150 grit twice. The big swirl marks are going away, but you can still see that there's swirl marks in the epoxy from the 150. So I went ahead and I vacuumed everything off and dusted it, wiped it off with a dry cloth to try to get as much of the dust off as I could. And now I'm going to go back and hit it with 220, and we'll see where that gets us. So hit it with the 220 once and then bring you back and show you what it looks like. So stay tuned. All right, I hit it with it's actually 240 grit, not 220 grit, I lied. I got everywhere really good. I got it wiped off, got it vacuumed off. These big drag marks are from my vacuum, so I won't do that on the very last pass. I'm going to hit it one more time with the 240 grit to smooth out any of those imperfections. First, though, I'm going to set up my router and do a round over on the edges here. I think I'm going to go with a 3/8 inch round over. I experimented with a 1/4 inch on the bottom side, and it's okay, but I think I want to go with a little bit more. So I'm going to go with a 3/8 inch round over on here. So let me get the router set up, and I'll actually turn you guys on so you can see me do that, because it is kind of a satisfying process most of the time. But I'm going to do 3 of the 4 sides because this side is going to be up against the wall, so I don't necessarily want it on that side. So I'm going to do this side, far end, and that side. So let me get you set up, and I'll bring you back. All right, here we go. that seemed to turn out okay. Pretty smooth all the way around. Got a little bit of an opadiddy got to fix here from the saw, but we'll take care of that. Yeah, I actually really like the way that 3/4 inch look, or 3/8 inch looks all the way around there, so that's pretty cool. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead, dust everything off again one more time, and go ahead and hit it with 220 grit very lightly one more time. So I'll bring you back once that's done. All right, so there we go. Everything's cleaned up. I hit it that one more time with 240. Looks pretty good. I'm still seeing swirl marks in the middle here. So I went ahead and I found some 320, and I'm going to use this random orbital sander here and hit probably just the epoxy portion of it with that, because the wood looks and feels really, really good right now. So I'm going to leave that, but I want to get some more of those swirl marks out of that epoxy there. So I'm going to hit that quick with the 320 and see what that does. So I'll bring you back once I finish that portion. All right, there we go. I actually hit it twice with the 320 grit. I hit it, wiped it down really good, and hit it once more, and I'm liking that a lot better. Very few indications of swirls left. So I think we're getting just about ready. Now, the biggest thing we have to do is to get the majority of the dust out of this thing before we get ready to do our seal coat and top coat here. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way this is looking right now. So I'm going to take a break for tonight, and I'm going to come back tomorrow and try to get this whole thing cleaned up in here to get as much dust out as I can. So I will bring you back after that. All right, we're back the next day. I've let everything settle down overnight here. I've got this floor super, super clean. I went ahead and I took some compressed CO2 and I blew off the top of my slab here. I took some wood filler and I filled this area in here to get that really big gouge out. I'm going to leave that one in there for a little bit of character. And I also did the same thing on my antler back here where I made my cut. I'm going to go ahead at some point and smooth that out a little bit more here, but I'm going to leave that for now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some isopropyl alcohol and spray it all over here and wipe it down with a clean, dry rag to try to get up any more of that residual dust, because that isopropyl alcohol will help collect any residual dust that's on there. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that down with the alcohol and a rag, and I'm going to go ahead and give the floor one more Swiffer here on the floor, a Swiffer wet jet on the floor, just to get up any more dust and to help, moisten the floor to help any residual dust from getting kicked up as I'm going about my next process. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, then I'll bring you back and we'll talk about our seal coat here. So stay tuned. All right, floor is all Swiffered and the slab is all cleaned up. So this is everything that I was able to pull off there just using the isopropyl alcohol and wiping. So glad I did that. It actually is visibly different as I'm looking at it now from before, and I can rub my hand on there and I'm not picking up any more residue from the dust. Okay, so it looks good. All right, now we're ready to do a seal coat. All right, so I'm gonna have to do 2 coats on this bad boy. One is a thin seal coat, and that's just gonna seal up this wood that I have on here, and that'll help seal in the bubbles and make it so that it'll be a nice, smooth, even surface. So we're supposed to use 1 ounce per surface area of slab you have here. So for me, that's a hair over a gallon. So I've got 1 gallon here available. So I'm going to mix up 1 gallon and put that on my slab here. Unlike my deep pour, which is a 2-to-1 ratio, this stuff is a 1-to-1 ratio. So I've got a half a gallon of each. I'm going to pour it in here just to make sure that I'm at an even amount. And I'm going to go ahead and mix it up here with my mixer here. I'm going to keep it on low to try to keep as many bubbles out as I can. A lot of guys will do it by hand, but other guys will do it with the mixer, and they say it turns out just fine because the mixer does introduce a little bit more bubbles to it. But since this is just a seal coat, I don't really care too much, and it'll give me kind of an experiment for my main coat at the end just to see how bad the bubbles are. So I'm going to go ahead and pour these 2 in here and give it a good mixing for a couple, 2-3 minutes with my mixer there. And then I'll bring you back and I will show you the pour here. So stay tuned. All right, we got everything mixed up. So now let's go ahead and pour. I'm just leaving my drill sit here to drip off any residual stuff. I'll actually move it down here to kind of keep it out of your way. I'm going to start by running this right down the middle, going back and forth and back and forth. And then we're going to use this big, spatula. Actually, I think it's actually for drywall to spread this stuff around here. So here we go. Now it does look cloudy right now, but that will clear up. That's just bubbles. And try to spread this around here pretty evenly if you can. But it doesn't too much matter because you're going to be spreading it out. Make sure we get all that out of there. I'm going to go ahead and set this upside down here on the corner to let that all drain out. All right, now we just start spreading. Sorry, just trying to get some of the excess goo off of there. Set that down on the ground here, and here we go. Now we just start spreading it around. And as we're doing this, we're starting to see the grains in that wood start to come out. So yeah, just push it from the ends, or from the middle out towards the ends. And you can't probably see it down there, but I can see it down here. Some of the cloudiness in the epoxy is going away, and it's getting to be crystal clear again. So just keep spreading it around. There we go. Yep, just like that. Spread it out towards the edges. That epoxy is going to start seeping in to that wood. Put you over there for a minute. Hopefully I'm not blocking my camera view, but so this stuff is a lot thicker than my my deep pour. My deep pour was real thin, so that I could get down in every crevice. This is a lot thicker because it's meant to not settle down so deep, and it's meant to seal. So the other stuff got down in the pores, you know, a little bit, but this stuff is really meant to seal. Yeah, that's looking really nice down in there. All right, just keep working it out towards the end. Ahead and move him a little bit. Now you have several hours of working time here, so you don't really have to be in any sort of a hurry. So don't worry about that. All right, we'll go ahead and set him down here, get him out of the way, and we'll just keep working. I'm going to go right up to the edge. I don't really want to have it overflow yet. I'm going to go right up to the edges here. Some of it's starting to overflow, but that's okay, because we got to get it on the sides as well. Alright, we'll work on this side, pushed up towards the edge. Looks like I'm going to have just about the right amount. You want to pay special attention to any sort of knots or any sort of big crevices in here, because you want this to seep down in those. There we go. Okay, now come over to the other side and we'll do the same thing. Very nice. I'm liking the way this is looking. It's looking just like it did when I did my initial pour. So everything's going to be nice and smooth this time. Work it right up to that edge. You'll kind of notice too, as you're dragging it over some portions of the wood will stay a different color for a second. That's because this stuff is so much thicker, it takes a second to start soaking in. Maybe you'll be able to see that as I get closer to you. Ooh, don't waste it. Don't waste it now. There we go. Right up to that edge. Nope, don't waste it. Look at that. Get some up here by our antler. Yeah. There, hopefully you can see what I'm seeing there, where some of that wood is kind of discolored or doesn't change colors at first, but then this stuff slowly starts to seep in. Another thing to mention too is it recommends having this stuff pretty warm. You don't want it cold so that it mixes better since it is so thick. So fortunately my garage is 75, 80 degrees right now, so that's where I was keeping this stuff, so that's good. But if you were keeping this in a basement or something like that, you probably are going to want to go ahead and get it up to at least room temperature for a little bit. Maybe put it in front of a space heater or something like that. You don't want it hot, but you want it to get warm. There, look at that. That's looking mighty fine. All right, just make sure we're right up to the edge all the way around. Then we'll start working on our sides. I'll show you how to do that. Right up to that edge. Yeah. You don't really have to worry too much about thick spots and thin spots because this stuff is self-leveling. And we're gonna come back and we're gonna do a thick coat anyways that should fill in any of our low spots for our final top coat. There we go. Alright, there we go. Pretty much where we want to be. Alright, now go ahead and clean off my smearer here. My gloved hand. Always wear gloves with this stuff. It's a nightmare to get off your fingers. Should be wearing safety glasses too, but I forgot to put them on before I started the process. But that's alright. Alright, we'll set him off to the side here for now. Okay, now for our sides. They do give you a nice foam brush with the kit when you buy this, but I see a lot of guys that just do like this. Just take it, get a little bit from the bank, and just smear it on the sides there. Just kind of work it in. If you feel it getting dry, just dab a little bit up here, and then just run your fingers along there so it's nice and smooth. Just get a nice coating on that outside there. See, just like that. Make sure you're getting along your edge, let it overlap onto the bottom a little bit. Just like that, work it in. See, now you've got a general idea of what this table is actually going to look like when it's done. And I'm liking what I'm seeing. There's a lot of character in here with all the knots and different things like that. We got lights, we got darks, we got everything going on, so I'm digging it. Really happy I chose this piece of wood. Alright, just keep working our way around like that. Make sure we got this whole side covered. Yep. Alright, now we'll go ahead and work our way over to this side. You probably can't see what I'm doing right now here, but I'm just doing the same thing along this back edge here, side edge. There we go, getting it covered nice and good. There we go. All right. Now we'll go ahead and get our edge that's right by you. Looking nice. Like I said, I can't tell you how happy I am with the way this is turning out here. It's actually been a longer project than I thought it would be, just because it takes a lot of time to work with the wood and stuff like that on here, but I think the end result's going to be pretty good. I can see why people charge a lot of money for these things. It is a lot of work, and there are many, many ways you can screw it up. There. Ow. Jump for the table. Alright, almost got this. The edge is done. It's kind of cool on the edges here. I'll have to show you later, but now you can see through from the side here too, so you can see the sand layer, then you can see see through the epoxy and see into some of the features there. It's kind of like looking into the side of an aquarium wall. It's pretty sweet. I'll have to show you once this dries up and everything. Okay, smear that one more time. Smear this one more time to make sure we got everything. Yeah. Go along all the bottoms. Hit the drip marks. This thing is going to continue to drip, which is fine. Look at that. All right, now, what they want you to do is to go ahead and they say you can't use a paintbrush, but that leaves bristles. But what I'm going to do is you want to blot the surface to try to level everything out. Like I said, it's not overly important, but you want to try to level everything out, because I've been pushing it around quite a bit and there might be some ridges in there, and this will just help let everything calm down. Okay, so you just basically take your hand and do one of these. Right, all around. Like I said, they say you can use a paintbrush for this, but a lot of guys, talk about how you leave bristles in there. To me, this makes more sense because you're not going to leave bristles in there. from a hand workout or a wrist workout, forearm workout. It helps kind of slap it into the pores a little bit too, I guess. Kind of breaks up any bubbles that are going on there too. Kind of, you know, disrupts the surface tension. Yeah, this stuff is gooey. This stuff is definitely a lot thicker than the deep pour. All right, go ahead. Whoops. Trying not to get me on the camera. Go ahead and go down this side. Just lightly tapping it just to disrupt that surface tension. Not really a big deal. Middle. Get the areas that I haven't gotten before. You'll see this starting to level out as you're doing this here too, so it's kind of cool. I like it. I'm not really seeing any big bubbles come up yet from any of these bigger crevices and things like that in here, but they may still come. All right. So that's good. So now I'm just going to let that settle for a minute or two, and I'll bring it back once I'm done with that. All right, I moved your camera angle down a little bit here. So what we got to do next is we got to run our torch across there to try to pop any of those bubbles that came up. So put you down so maybe you can see it. You can kind of see, I think I can see it in the lens there a little bit, but I'm going to run this torch along there and see if I can't pop those bubbles. Now you can use a heat gun too, and they said you can use a hair dryer in a pinch, but the torch seems to be the most chosen weapon for this sort of thing. So that's what we're going to use. You don't want to hold the heat in any one spot for any length of time, and you don't want to hold it too close. So you want to, keep things moving. So here we go. Oh yeah, I can see it working. Hopefully you can too. Wow, that worked really well. Oh, here's some over here. There we go. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this probably doesn't do it justice on here because you're getting reflection off the light here. Here, let me go ahead and I'll take you off the camera and we'll see if we can zoom in a little bit. 1 second. Or take you off the tripod. 1 second. Alright, here, we'll try to get you down at the surface level there. Oop, I see a little bubble forming right there. But you can see for the most part, she's smooth as glass. So you want to keep watching for those bubbles. A lot of them will work themselves out, but some of them will keep bubbling up from like some of those big knots in there. Oh, you can see there's something right over there I'll have to take care of. This is also a good time to look to make sure that no big chunks and stuff fell in there, which might be what that is over there. It looks pretty big. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and keep doing this. I'm going to hit the whole thing with the torch in a little while there to get any more of those bubbles out. Keep babysitting it, and I may have to like push some epoxy over where some big voids are, like if, you know, something like that opened up or something like that. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. Otherwise, I'll bring it back if anything interesting pops up. So stay tuned. All right, fast forward an hour, and here's where we're at. The majority of the really tiny bubbles have stopped coming up, and pretty much everything's smooth as glass. But you can see right there, there's a bubble. I think right there, there's a bubble. Moving along here. There's one there. There's a couple group of them there. There's a group of them there. There's a bigger one right here. Then there's some other ones here, right? So those are all in like knots and little crevices and things like that in the wood that keep showing up. So what I do is, as I'm seeing them pop up, I'll go by and I'll hit them all with the torch, pop them, which is a good thing to do because every time you pop it, it lets more and more epoxy fill down in the hole. So what happens here is the wood is very porous, and there may be a crack or not a puncture, but like a crack in there, and it goes like on angles and this and that, and they're kind of like veins going down there, right? Where air is trapped in there. So it's trying to escape right now as the epoxy is trying to fill, and it forms the bubbles. So you keep hitting the bubbles, and it opens it up, and it lets a little bit more fill in. And hopefully we get it all filled in before this thing's ready to solidify. Now, it does seem like it is starting to get more tacky right now, like it's starting to thicken up more. There's less and less drippers underneath here, everything else, but yeah, so we're just battling those. So hopefully I can keep popping those, and they'll be just real small, which is not a big problem, because tomorrow, once this thing has dried for about 24 hours, we come back, we hit the whole thing with 220 or 240 grit, just real lightly, and it opens those up, and hopefully those will have sealed, and then we go ahead and we do our top coat, which is a real thick layer, so any sort of voids and impurities in here should be fine. But that could pose a problem if these don't actually seal themselves all the way up. We might wind up with bubbles in our finished surface, which means we'd have to sand down and do another thin coat, so we don't want to have to do that. So I'm just going to keep babysitting this for a while now, and then we'll see where we get. So I will let you know how that goes. All right, here we are the next day, and everything is rock hard, looking good. And this is pretty much what the finished product is going to look like once we're done here. It's just going to be a little bit thicker here with our top coat. But all right, so here's how this played out last night. I babysat this thing for a couple hours, popping bubbles here and there. Got to a point where the epoxy was starting to solidify, and it was getting real tacky, so it wouldn't really flow anymore. So I popped the remaining bubbles, and there are some like divots in here that we're still trying to fill in. So hopefully, with any luck, that one actually is a bubble still. Hopefully with any luck, these filled in enough where it's going to seal here when I do my final coat. So you can kind of see over there, yeah, there's some dimples over there from where some of those bubbles were filling in. But all in all, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Like I said, still a few bubbles, but less than I was expecting, so that's good. I was worried I'd have to do another coat on top of this one, but I think we're going to be good. So what we have to do now is go ahead and rough this all up again. So I'm going to take some 220 grit. I'm going to do the sides by hands, just rough it up, and then lightly with my orbital sander on the top surface there, just to give it some texture. That way the next layer will have a chance to bond to it. You need to have that texture, otherwise it won't bond properly. So I'm going to go ahead and get that roughed up, get it blown off, hit it again with the isopropyl alcohol, and then wipe it off, and then we'll be ready to do our top coat here. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll talk you through what we're going to do with the top coat. So 1 second. All right, we're back. Everything's sanded down with 220 grit. I blew everything off with compressed CO2, and then I wiped it down twice with rubbing alcohol and a dry towel. So this thing is about as clean as going to be. Okay, I also went ahead and I Swiffered the floor again in here too, just to try to keep me from kicking up any dust as I'm walking around. All right, so now it's time to do our final top coat here. Basically, we want to use 3 ounces per square inch. So when I put this in the calculator, it tells me need around 2.5 gallons, so I have 3. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up the 3, which is probably way overkill, but that's what I'm gonna go ahead and do there. So basically, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and mix that up, and I'll bring you back when it's time for the pour. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention before I did my pour yesterday was you want to make sure that this slab is dead nuts level. That way all the epoxy doesn't flow towards one side or the other. So I took my 6-foot level and I ran it across here, down this third, down the middle, and then down that side there, and then I went this way in various places along the way, and then I shimmed up underneath here. I've got it sitting up on 2x4s and stuff. And I shimmed up where necessary to make sure this thing is dead nuts level. And I did that. I just checked it again today, and everything is right where it's supposed to be. So that's going to help you out a lot to get yourself a nice, clean, level slab here when you're done. So our goal here now is to get another 1/8-inch layer built up on here of that epoxy. And then with all luck, we're going to be done. Okay, hopefully no big bubbles show up through here that's going to mess up our plans where we have to sand it down and do some more. So I'm going to go ahead and get that mixed up. I'm going to mix up all 3 gallons at once. I'm going to use my big bucket this time and my drill the same as I did yesterday. Then I'll bring you back when we're going to pour that, because there's a little bit different things that need to happen with this pour than the one yesterday. So I'll bring you up to speed on those once I bring you back. So stay tuned. All right, folks, I went ahead and I mixed that a good 5 or 6 minutes. I got my 3 gallons all ready to go. Here's the difference, right? So yesterday we used this bad boy to smear everything around, right? Just to push it around, make sure we got it to cover everything. We don't want to do that today. Get this set back down here. Today we want to use this bad boy. So this end has 1/4-inch deep serrations on there. So what you want to do today, instead of just like pushing it around and smearing it around, you want to use this to help spread it out evenly. So as I pour, I'm going to pour it all right down the middle like I did yesterday. I'm going to take this bad boy and run it like this so that I'm pushing what's on top and leaving behind that 1/4-inch right there, right? So I'm going to do that for the whole thing. And that's just going to help me get a nice, even spread around the whole slab there. And it's going to help mix it up a little bit too, right? Because it's going to make a little bit of turbulence in case I miss some stuff that's in the bucket there. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I'm going to pour everything right down the middle, leaving about this much from either end. Then I'm going to work, start smearing it around, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully I don't have too much of an overflow here. All right, I'm going to set this bad boy down here for now, and here we go. I'll start down at the far end and work my way towards you this time. Again, the idea here is to get a nice, even 1/8-inch coating all over this entire slab. So that's our goal. That's what we're going to try to do. All right, put this upside down here. All right. Now I need to start smearing. Like I said, take it like this. You can see we're leaving trowel marks in there. Ideally, you'd have a little bit larger one, but I couldn't find one in the time I needed for this. Yep. So we're going to push it right up towards the edge. Try not to be on too much of an angle because it's going to decrease the amount that you're pushing around. So try to keep it as vertical as you can. You can see, yep. Get it right up to that edge. Try not to push it over yet. We're just going to go ahead and pull from the middle, push out. Pull from the middle, push out. This is a lot that I put on there. I don't want too much to come over the edge yet here. I don't want to lose too much yet. Breaking my my own rule there. I want to keep it more vertical than what I was doing just there. Yeah, having a wider one of these would make this a lot easier for what I'm doing right now. Ooh, a little too close. Go from over here, so we get a nice spread this way. Go. Okay, go ahead, get this guy out of the way. Put him underneath, and start working this way. Take your time, you have plenty of working time. This is actually very satisfying as you're doing it. Ooh, getting a little bit too close to the edge there. All right, work a little bit over here. Yep, losing some over the edge. You don't want to do that too much yet. Don't want to do it too much at all, honestly. There we go. Actually, get some towards this corner because there's kind of a deep spot right there. I want to start seeping in. There we go. All right. Set you down for a minute. Go ahead and get a bucket out of the way. A little bit of waste in there, but not too much. Okay. And continue on. Almost. All right, now start trying to work right up to our edges here. So hopefully you can see this in the camera. Let me take a look here. All right, so basically you just kind of take it on a bit of an angle like this and just work right up to the edge with what you got. And then after we get that whole edge covered, we're gonna do like we did yesterday. There we go. Do like we did yesterday, and we're gonna take our hand, smear it down the sides. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and work my way down this way, getting it right at that edge. I want the majority of it to stay on top. Don't want that much to leak down on me. Pull it from the bank here. Center's your bank, that's why you pour it in the center first. Whoops. Wouldn't that be a pain if I knocked that all down right now? Would not be a happy camper. Alright, making some progress. There we go. Right up to that edge. Okay, just a little bit more left to do here. Good. Alright, now we're up to that edge, right? The entire edge is now covered. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and, well, here, let this drip off here a little bit. Now we're going to go ahead and find a place to put this. That's a good place. We're going to go ahead and do our sides. So I'm going to take my left hand here. You can do whatever hand you want, but just get my hand wet, and then we'll start smearing just like we did yesterday on our seal coat. Smear that stuff right around to make sure everything's covered. And we want to try to get most of it to stay up on top. So if you've got a lot, you can actually kind of push it back up. There we go. Put the bank down here. Good. Make sure you get these corners real nice. There we go. Keep a smearing, keep a smearing. Again, you can take your time. This stuff has a pretty good time frame before it goes south, or before it solidifies. I mean, last night it was a good couple hours before it got really, really tacky, so we're in pretty good shape. And by morning it was pretty much rock hard. Very excited for the way this is turning out, guys. Cover. And I did go around quite a bit last night too, as I was waiting for, in between bubble popping sessions. I'd go around and I'd reach under and I'd pull the drip marks, and there were very few this morning, so I think there's going to be a few more this time just because I'm using that much more epoxy than I did this morning, but that definitely helped because then that's something I won't have to sand underneath there. So I'm not looking forward to. Okay, we're just about done with this side. Get that corner. And we'll get this last side here. Sorry, I know I'm in your way right now. Alright, there we go. I'm a little thin right here, it looks like, so I'm going to drag a little bit more this way from our bank. Yeah, because that's pretty thick right there. Cover up this area here a little bit. So remember, we have kind of a taper here from where our antler's sticking up. Not ideal, but I'm going to try to make this as gradual of a taper as possible. There we go. Oop, don't overflow too much on there, guy. There. That's better. Okay, now, remember yesterday? I talked about blotting. We're definitely going to want to do that today because those trowel lines can be permanent, okay? So we do want to go ahead and blot this whole thing like we did yesterday, especially because we have those trowel lines. So again, you just take your hand. Just like this. Try to blot out all those trowel lines. And this is just going to settle down. Just like it did yesterday. This kind of helps mix it up a little bit too. Breaks the surface tension, gets some of them deep bubbles out of there from the mixing process. But all in all, those are already starting to come out, and I'm going to hit it with my torch here in a minute. Just like we did yesterday. Not really a wrong way to do this from what I can tell. Like again, I'm no expert, but I'm just going by what I've seen other people do, reading instructions, reading things like that. And like I said, a lot of guys use paintbrushes. I don't really like the idea of using a paintbrush because you get bristles in there, because they admit that can be what happens. So why not just use your hand with a glove on it, right? Makes sense to me. I feel like you cover more surface area with your gloved hand than you do with a paintbrush anyways, but what do I know? I'm not an expert. A weekend warrior, just like most of the rest of you. It's real nice and thick lac in the middle there. I might pull a little bit more out towards the edges here because it's a little bit thinner, you can tell, but maybe that's where it wants to settle, because maybe we're still got a bit of a cup in there. I don't know. All right, there we go. I'm going to let that settle a little bit. Then I'm going to come back and I'll hit it with the torch. So I'll bring you back when I'm doing that. All right, everything's settled out. Now it's time for our first torching. Let's see how that looks. All right, that's starting to look good there, fellers. Here, I'll pop you off the tripod here and we'll go and take a look. That really got it nice and smooth. Doesn't really do it justice in this camera here, but yeah, she's looking good. I'm not seeing any big bubbles popping up yet, but we'll see. So I'm going to have to do that bubble popping a few more times because there are some bubbles trapped down deep in there from the mixing process, but it's looking pretty good. So I'll bring you back in a little bit and we'll see how things are looking. So stay tuned until then. All right, we're back actually 2 days later. So I babysat this thing for about 2 hours the night I poured it. Kept popping the surface bubbles, the big ones and the small ones. And I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is the majority of this turned out pretty damn good. It's nice and smooth, nice and clear, and I'm very happy with it. The bad news is some of those bubbles I battled during my seal coat continued to come back during my flood coat here. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3 there. There's a couple here, a couple here, a couple more there, and 2 or 3 more right here. But some of them from the seal coat actually sealed up and didn't come back. Like I had 2 over there that were pretty bad, and a couple right here that were pretty bad, and those all stayed away, and that all turned out really good. I mean, look at how that character turned out inside with that knot and everything. That looks really cool. So, honestly, the right thing to do is to take this and sand it down again to try to get some of these open back up and to try to do another flood coat. I don't want to do that yet, anyways. I want to try something first. I have a theory. Now, I haven't seen anybody do this because normally they say in order to get a good, clean finish on this, you need to redo the whole thing and re-pour the whole thing, right? I have seen guys, there's a video I found where they had a fly land on this and it kind of like flailed its way down the middle here and left a whole bunch of wrinkles. And they were able to, they wet sanded that area with 400, 500, 600, 800, all the way up to 2,000 grit, and then polished it at the end. And they were able to get those marks out and able to get the finish to look just like the rest of it. So I want to try to do something similar here. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't work, then I just have to redo the whole thing, right? So I think what I want to do is I'm going to take my Dremel tool, very gingerly, open up some of these bubbles that I see down here. Because, I mean, I don't know if you can really see it in the camera here, but those are protruding above the surface, right? So I'm going to have to sand them flat. Otherwise, I don't really want to live with these big bubbles sticking up like this, like you can see here, right? So I want to take my Dremel and very gingerly sand that down, sand that down, sand that down, sand that down. And then I do have a little bit more of epoxy. I want to try something. So since these bubbles keep coming up, that means that there's still like little veins down in the wood that don't want to seal up. So I want to try something. I haven't seen it done before, and I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I want to try something. Once I open this up with a Dremel tool, I want to take a little piece of cellophane, clear cellophane, and put it down in that hole where the bubble is, and then put epoxy on top of that to see if that won't plug that hole and seal that hole. Now, you might see a little something of that cellophane in there, but it probably won't be that much. So it's something I want to try. And again, worst case scenario, I just grind it back out if it doesn't work, right? So I'm going to go ahead here now. I'm waiting on the epoxy to come in the mail yet, but I'm going to take my Dremel tool and grind some of these open and then blow them out really good with my compressed air and hit it with some alcohol to clean out those pores. But I'm going to try to open these all back up, get them down about as level as I can with the surface. And then we're going to try to fill that with epoxy. Once that epoxy hardens, then I'm going to spot sand each one of these with multiple grits to get it up to a fine grit and try to polish that area and see if that works, right? Like I said, the worst case scenario is it won't work and I won't get the same finish. I can also try to polish the entire thing too, just so it all gets that even coat all the way around. So I feel like I have a couple of options here other than actually redoing the whole thing, sanding it down and re-seal coating it. Flood coating it. So I'm going to go ahead and open some of these up with the Dremel and show you what that looks like. So stay tuned. Alright, so here's what I've done. I've taken a few of these holes and you can see there I took this really tiny little grinding bit on my Dremel and I ground until I popped through into the cavity and then I opened up the top portion here until I got away any ridge so it feels flat going across when I run my finger across it there, right? Just to open those up. I got a couple, there's a small one I did here, I got a couple bigger ones. I'm going to take a slightly bigger bit and do the same thing just because it's going to take, less time type of thing. This one, I don't know what happened there. Something got squirted back out. I'm not really sure. But I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them, and I'll show you what that looks like once I'm done. Alright guys, here we are. So I had to fix up some of these bigger spots here that had some raised areas. So those are all scuffed up. So those will be good, obviously, test areas for when we try to wet sand with increasingly higher grits there, right? But anyways, I've already done a couple of tests here. So I've got, let's see here, got one, I can't even hardly see them right now, 2, and then 3, 4, where I took a tiny piece of cellophane, and then I took a paper clip basically, and I stuffed it down in the hole. And then I very gingerly, with this needle, injected just the smallest amount of epoxy in there. And you can see, yeah, I mean, we're a little bit raised, but I'm not seeing any bubbles forming yet, so that's a good thing. Same thing over here. So this might work. So I'm gonna go ahead and set up, and I'll show you how I do one here. Focus, there we go. Show you how I do one here just to show how the process goes. And then we'll carry on and do the rest, and I'll show you the results. So stay tuned 1 second. All right, here we go. So you can't even hardly see that, but I've cut the tiniest little piece of cellophane here. And I'm gonna take it, if I can find my paper clip here, there it is. Take it and stuff it down this hole with the paper clip. Now I should mention that I hit all these holes in surrounding areas with isopropyl alcohol, and then blew it out. Oop, I can't even get it to go down there. Blew it out with compressed air. Try and get it as clean as possible. All right, so I'm over that hole. So you stuff it down in there, just like so. So small you can't even hardly see it. Yeah, you guys probably can't even see what I'm doing there, but basically, oop, it came back out. This is really delicate work. All right, so it's down in the hole. I'm gonna take my little needle here and just try to do it so you can see it. Works better to hold it with both hands, but put one drop down in there and let it settle. And it starts filling up the hole. So now that cellophane actually popped out on me there a little bit. So we're gonna take our paper clip, try to hit any of these other holes, and try to work it down in there. Now that it's a little sticky, it actually stays down there a little bit better than it did before. All right, so it's down in there. Now we'll take one more little drop, so I have a little bit of residual there, and boop, there we go. So that's how we're gonna try to fix these things. I think it's gonna work, because I said so far none of the other ones have had bubbles pop back up, so it's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit the rest of those, and I'll show you the results once I'm done, so stay tuned. Okay, and here's the verdict. I think it worked on many of them. A couple it did not, and that may have been because I didn't get the cellophane in the right spot, like this one right here. It's continuing to bubble, but a lot of the other ones are not. So I think this might be a success. Taking a look over here. Like these are like all but disappeared. That one is trapped down deep inside, so that one's not gonna disappear, but the other ones over here, I don't even see them, right? And then I've got a few over there, kind of the same thing. So I might just have some minor fixing to do here. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this set overnight, let this all harden and everything, and then we'll check back tomorrow and see how everything looks. So I'll bring Well, folks, we had a bit of an issue. As it turns out, my phone got full, and I was recording clips, and it was not saving because I was full, and it wasn't warning me of that. So I went back to look and review some footage, and it was gone. So quite a bit has happened since the last time we met. So I'm going to flip you around, and I'll show you what actually happened. So the table is now done. So I'll tell you how it wound up. So when I left you, we were putting cellophane down in some of the bubbles and then resealing it with epoxy. Now, that worked with probably half of the bubbles that I had. The other half, I think the epoxy floated up or didn't sit quite right. So what I wound up with was some bubbles that were sealed up and just kind of like domed off with the epoxy like you'd expect. And you had some of them that continued to seep through. So I made the executive decision to do another seal coat, another top coat, okay? So what I did though was, and I'm gonna have to live with this, but some of those ones that continued to bubble up, I actually took super glue and filled the hole and it sealed it up quick, basically topped it off. So I'm left with some little, like, little hovering white spots in here, but I can live with that because the majority of that stuff is gone, right? So I've got like 3 here, I've got 1 right here, and then I think I have, well, you can't even see the other ones. They're so small. So actually these over here I think sealed up pretty good. So that's what I was wound up with. So I wound up doing another light seal coat on top of this. I got another gallon and I seal coated it with another 1/16 of an inch. Let it sit for a couple days, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but it turned out really, really good with just those minor blemishes. I do have one spot right here that for whatever reason came out kind of scaly, but it's barely noticeable. I think I'm gonna just leave that there. So yeah, let me show you how I mounted the hardware here. So basically, I have these L brackets, and I mounted those up all the way across there, evenly spaced. And then on the other side, I went ahead and I put some of these bad boys in here. All right, so she's good and secure now. I've got 4 of them. I've got 1 over there, 1 on the inside there, 1 here, and 1 here. So she's solid. Turned out basically level all the way across there. I put my 6-foot level on here. It's level side to side and all the way across, so I couldn't be happier with that. So the only thing I have left to do is a little bit of trim work, so I have to get some trim cut up and fill in the spaces around there, and then it'll be done. So yeah, that's about that. So hopefully you all enjoy what you're seeing here. Something a little bit different, but here, just gonna give you a close-up. It turned out really, really, really shiny, really smooth. Very happy with the way it looks right now. Very clear, and it just kind of accentuates the room because this is a newly finished basement, so we've got kind of a nature thing going on here with deer mounts, fish mounts, things like that. Kind of, you know, rustic decor down here, so it kind of sets it off nicely sitting over here. Here, let me put the bar chairs in place and you get a real feel for how it looks. 1 second. All right, so there we go with the bar stools all set in place. So this will be a nice little gathering spot for people to watch the game. I'm actually going to wind up putting a TV over there, and I've got my projector over there. So yeah, I think it all turned out really good. One thing that did happen though, as I was moving this plank over, the tip of the antler actually broke off up here, so I'm going to re-glue that on there. And kind of like the way that looks. It kind of like transitions up into the wall, just kind of something different. So anyways, all right, well, thank you for watching, tuning in. If you like this sort of thing, please like and subscribe, and I hope you learned from some of my mistakes here. Again, I'm not a finished carpenter by any means, so this is my first adventure into doing an epoxy table like this, and I think it turned out okay. Definitely things I could have done better, but definitely some things that turned out pretty good. So learning experience, and I hope you all learned something from watching. So until the next one, thanks for watching.